So we now move on to the second of our plenary sessions, and you might see some method to this programme. Next, we invite two speakers: Dana Cordell from University of Technology Sydney and Jen Metzen from Western University in Ontario. And Dana and Jen are going to be presenting on circular economies in phosphorus, and also the new concept of net zero phosphorus that's been developed over the last few years. So first up is Dana. Thank you, first of all, Dana, for staying up late. Dana's in Sydney. It's very late in Sydney. So thank you, Dana, for that. So Associate Professor Dana Cordell, University of Technology, Sydney. She's the Research Director at the Institute for Sustainable Futures, where she leads the Food Systems Research Group. Dana leads international projects on sustainable food systems and phosphorus management. She has particular expertise in high-level stakeholder engagement to improve policy and foster mutual learning. So Dana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to present today and also to be part of the meeting. Can I check everyone can hear me okay in my Australian accent, my late night Australian accent? Fantastic. So let me share my screen to get started. Okay, can everyone see that okay?
Yeah, that's all clear, Dana.
Excellent,
thank you.
Great. Fantastic. So as Brian mentioned, so I'm going to be presenting, Will asked me to speak on accelerating the transition to a circular global phosphorus cycle. And the picture you can see there in the background is from a small rural fertilizer retailer in Sri Lanka, one of our projects on phosphorus and climate smart agriculture. Just as a reminder, I guess, that with any of these big transformations, we need to keep people front and centre, farmers, consumers, industry, and their perceptions, their behaviours, their transactions, etc. So we know that the circular economy is very much on the global agenda at the moment, and increasingly so as the circular economy of nutrients. And part of that is because we know now that we're not actually going to meet our climate targets without the circular economy, because switching to renewable energy alone isn't going to be enough to achieve our net zero targets. We will need to be recirculating nutrients and organic waste from the food system, because we know that the food system contributes some 30% of total greenhouse gas emissions, and the top levers we can press are things like diverting organic and food waste from landfill to avoid methane generation, and changing diets towards more low phosphorus footprints diets, and you'll hear a bit more on that from Jen Metzen. But we also know that we won't be able to live within the safe operating space of our planetary boundaries if we don't stop these wasteful and inefficient habits. And we know that phosphorus and nitrogen continue to be exceeding the safe operating space at an alarming rate due to this linear flow of phosphorus from the ground, particularly for mining, production of fertilizers, through aquatic ecosystems where it's causing widespread damage. And we also know that we won't be able to grow food into the future if we don't return vast amounts of nutrients, particularly phosphorus, back to the food system, because there is no substitute for phosphorus in producing food. And in that little diagram you can see there, it shows that if we want to meet long-term global food security of food production in the future, we'll need to invest in a whole portfolio of sustainability measures, ranging from increasing efficiency and demand management across the food value chain, which is in the blue. And then in the pink, you see a bunch of different measures around recycling phosphorus from human excreta, crop waste, manure, etc. And at the very bottom there, you have diversifying away from our main current source of phosphorus, which is non-renewable phosphate rock. And we know that we have an issue with our current remaining reserves, because while all farmers need access to phosphorus, we have just 5 countries who currently control around 83% of the world's remaining phosphate rock reserves. And as you can see, if you're not already familiar with this, Morocco controls the lion's share of that, including the reserves in Western Sahara, and others in the top 5 are Russia, China, Tunisia, and Egypt. And what this means is that whether we're talking about sub-Saharan Africa or Europe or Australia or India or Latin America, almost all countries are dependent on imported phosphate fertilizers, leaving them vulnerable to price fluctuations and supply disruptions. And these geopolitical risks are real, and we've seen them time again. Most recently, just a year and a half ago, we saw a 400% price spike of phosphate fertilizers, in part due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, China's imposition of export tariffs to protect their own domestic food production. And we also know that the global phosphorus value chain through the food system is incredibly leaky, one of the most inefficient value chains there is. I'm not going to go through all these numbers here. Some of you will have seen this before already, but just wanted to remind people of the point that we are consuming around 3 million tonnes of phosphorus every year in the food that we eat, but we're mining about 5 times that amount specifically for food production, meaning we're seeing about an 80% loss from mine to field to fork. And we know that a lot of those losses, particularly from agriculture and untreated or outdated wastewater treatment systems, is ending up in our waterways, where it's causing eutrophication and toxic algal blooms, which is why we're all here today, or one of the main reasons. So we can see that the risk profiles of phosphorus spans across food security, environment, and climate, and there's similar and different risk profiles for nitrogen, potassium, and sulfur in conventional fertilizers as well. We know we need to mitigate these risks, but what's really important, even though they're diverse, is we can't just hone in on one risk and without addressing some of the other ones, because they are all interlinked. For example, there's, of course, a lot of attention at the moment on green ammonia as a means to decarbonise nitrogen-based fertilisers because of the huge contribution to greenhouse emissions. And that might also address the geopolitical risks around the current dependence on Russian gas to produce nitrogen-based fertilisers. But of course, that's not going to address this issue of catastrophic and widespread eutrophication of water. And it's certainly not going to directly address the affordability of fertilisers for billions of the world's farmers who can't currently afford fertilisers. And we need to keep that issue of access and affordability for farmers front and centre, I think, in any of the solutions we're coming up with, because without that, we won't be growing food and we won't have food to eat. So coming back to a universal definition of or vision of phosphorus security, we're trying to make sure that all farmers can access phosphorus, our soils are fertile, agriculture is productive, all people have access to healthy diets and a balanced phosphorus intake, and that our water is clean and free from nutrient pollution. And the good news is that investing in a circular economy of phosphorus has a tremendous amount of sustainability benefits. So, for example, using food waste, human excreta, crop residues to create what I call renewable fertilisers. So a whole suite of food security benefits from at the national level, buffering against fertiliser price spikes by investing in domestic, local fertiliser production markets, right down to improving soil health. All those water quality and water security benefits, huge potential for improving climate resilience in terms of reducing methane generation and nitrous oxides, and of course other benefits like increasing local employment and manufacturing. But will the circular economy approach save us? We don't often take a critical enough approach or lens to this. And what does it specifically mean for nutrients? Because nutrients are very different from plastics or metals or other materials because they're biodegradable. So when you look at the strategies for, in the 10 R's for a circular economy, like repair, well, we can't repair manure, for example. Some of these don't actually translate for organic resources like nutrients. And we also need to remember that the circular economy is far more than just recycling. In fact, recycling is probably, I think, the 8th or the 9th R in the hierarchy of the 10 R's. So here's a bit of a schematic or conceptual framework that we put together of the circular economy of nutrients, specifically within the food system, of which phosphorus, of course, is central. And I just wanted to sort of highlight 4 key sort of high-level areas that we can focus on taking a circular economy approach to phosphorus. The first one, again, is at the top of the hierarchy, is about avoidance or reducing the inputs, because we know we have this very leaky system. We've talked a lot in the past about improving phosphorus use efficiency, changing diets. We can also think about innovative business models, like the fertiliser and agribusiness sector could be selling a service, like selling soil fertility or agricultural productivity, rather than just selling products. And in that way, we can see a win-win-win, because the environment can benefit from less application of fertilisers. The farmer can benefit with improved productivity. It's a great business model for the fertiliser industry, and we're reducing that input of non-renewable phosphate into the system. Another really important piece in creating a thriving circular economy is this purple piece of the puzzle, product development. So what this might mean for phosphorus, for example, is redesigning circular smart products like renewable fertilizers that are specifically targeted to end users. So getting out of the frame of mind that we're just trying to remove phosphorus and prevent it from polluting waterways, which we definitely want to do, but we don't want to then end up with a digestate or some sort of product and then looking for a market as an afterthought. We need to start with identifying our market, whether it's vulnerable maize farmers or high-end tomato indoor horticulturalists, and think, well, what kind of fertiliser products do they use? Are they liquid? Are they pellets? What's the price point at which they would switch to using these circular renewable products? And lots of questions around the market side that I won't go into now. We also need to keep in mind, of course, making sure that our feedstocks are clean. So whether it's wastewater or food waste, making sure they're free from everything from PFAS to pathogens, and also ensuring that there's a reliable supply of those feedstocks to feed into the supply chain for whoever's going to be producing those products downstream, because we can't just have a couple of tons here and there of compost or other products that are variable quality and volume. We need a secure supply as well. And finally, we need to think about integrating across sectors. We talk about this a lot, but it is incredibly important. And we can see that, the food waste sector, the water sector, sustainable aviation fuel sector, bioenergy are all developing their net zero strategies and plans, sometimes in isolation, and their circular economy plans. We need to bring these together, because a lot of these sectors are actually vying for the same organic wastes, crop residues, wastewater, etc., to produce their products, whether it's bioenergy or fertilizers. So we need to take an integrated approach there. And coupled with that, ensuring that policies are also integrated and keeping in mind those multiple sustainability goals. So not just thinking about pollution and biodiversity, or food security or energy security or climate security, but really bringing those together, or at least making sure that they're aligned, or there's some coordinating governmental body that brings those together. And just finally, just briefly, wanted to talk about system readiness, because we're talking about big transformations here, not just tweaking the system. So we need to think beyond just technology readiness level, for example, and think about transformational readiness of the phosphorus system. So are stakeholders ready to transform? Is there the right knowledge? Are they motivated? Is there the right skills and capacity? Do we have defined markets and end users? Are there the policies in place to overcome the current fragmentation and gaps, policy vacuums? Is there political will amongst our policymakers and leaders? And who's going to finance and manage the circular phosphorus chain at the end of the day? So I just wanted to leave with some of these bigger questions hanging in the air for today's meeting, which I'm really excited to hear more about. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, Dana. Thank you.